This is about defending democracy. This is no longer Democrats versus Republicans. What do you want your kids to believe in? There must be give and take.
This is White Flag with Joe Walsh.
I don't do this often. I don't skip a week of having a conversation with someone I disagree with. I don't take a week off. What I try to do every week is have a conversation with somebody who disagrees with me. And we try to model, right, how to have respectful conversation in a world that just doesn't do that. And every week, religiously, I have a conversation with somebody. But every now and then, I don't. Every now and then, I interrupt my weekly conversation when I've got something really important that I need to say, when I've got something I need to get off of my chest, when I've got something that's really eating at me. I've been doing this podcast now, White Flag with Joe Walsh, for about a year and a half. And I'll bet in that year and a half, I've probably only done this 3 or 4 times where I've said, stop, time out, no conversation this week. Man, I got something I got to say to everybody. We're at one of those points where I gotta convey something. Something that is eating at me. I don't remember the last time I did this, but I'm doing it this week. And I'm doing it this week because I am probably more sad, more dejected this week, probably than I've been since I turned against Donald Trump 6 years ago. Probably in these last 6 years, from the moment I publicly came out and said, that's it, I'm done with them. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure Donald Trump's not reelected. When I did that 5-6 years ago, it's been a tough road. You know that. Many of you have been on this road with me. I don't know, though, in this long, tough 5 to 6 year road, that I've ever been this down. And I've been down before. Look, this isn't easy, and I'm not alone. So many of you are doing the same damn thing. You love this country. You care deeply about this country. You want to do everything you can do to defend this country, to defend our democracy. And it's a fight. And it's a fight for me every day on TV, every day on the radio, every day on Twitter, every day on the podcast, every day out doing some sort of public speaking, every day doing everything I do. I feel like every day I'm fighting. I feel like every day I'm on a battlefield, fighting against these former friends of mine, supporters of mine, followers of mine on the right who have become anti-democracy. Fighting against so many of us that have no interest in speaking with each other, in listening to each other anymore. It's been a fight, and it's tiring and it's exhausting. And generally, I wake up every day, I wake up every morning ready to go. and I fire away on Twitter. I fire away when I go on TV, and I try to fire away on this podcast. But I get down. But again, I don't think, and I'm trying to recall, there have been some tough times over these last 6 years. And maybe you can hear it in my voice, but I think I can say that this week, the first full week in March, the year 2023, this is probably when I look at kind of the context of the climate, the environment we're in right now, concerned about and worried about whether this thing called America can keep going. There have been ups and downs, but this week, the first full week in March 2023, is the most dejected I've been. And I want to tell you why. And it means so much to me that I've put off a conversation on this podcast until next week. Here's what I mean. Here's why I'm down. And maybe when I put it like this, you'll get it. I'm more sad this week than I was on January 6th. I was really, really sad on January 6th. I remember at home in my living room with my dogs at my feet, with my wife at home with me. I remember watching January 6, 26 months ago. I remember the attack on our Capitol. I remember the rioting. I remember the looting. I remember the violence. I remember the attack on our Capitol. I remember the attack on a place in which I worked for a brief time. And that was a horrible day. And probably almost everybody listening to me right now feels the same way. I cried. On January 6th, watching it at home, I cried. And I got angry. But I remember going to bed that night, after the attack, after the violent attempt to overthrow an American election. And think about that again. Think about that. Think about what happened 26 months ago in this country, in America, the world's oldest democracy. There was a violent attempt to overthrow an American election. I was alternatively sad and angry all day, but I went to bed that night pretty down, pretty worried, and afraid for this country. Many of you probably felt the same way. But listen to me now. And I hope this doesn't sound odd. I'm more sad this week than I was on January 6th. I'll explain. On January 6th, damn near every Trump supporter I heard from that day was shaken by what they saw. Think about that. That day, January 6th, every Trump supporter, damn near every Republican, damn near every Republican-based voter that I heard from, and that day and the day after and the day after, I heard from hundreds of Trump supporters. every single one was shaken by what they saw on January 6th. Damn near every single one was frightened by what they saw, was like pushed back on their heels and said, wow, oh my God, Joe, I'm talking about Trump supporters, right? These folks from which I come, these folks that I still engage with on a daily, regular basis, Trump supporters were visibly shaken and frightened and sad and angry at what they saw on January 6th. That day, and as I've often said over the course of the last 2 years, that day and for a day or two or three or four afterwards, damn near every Trump supporter I heard from was shaken up by the attack on our Capitol, by the violent attempt to overthrow an American election. Today, this week, damn near every Trump supporter I've heard from this week, the first week of March 2023, damn near every Trump supporter I've heard from this week is now convinced that January 6th was no big deal, that January 6th was blown out of proportion, that January 6th was a hoax. 2 years later, 26 months later to be exact, every Trump supporter, every Republican base voter is now convinced that January 6th was blown out of proportion. It was no big deal. This is why I'm more dejected now than I was on January 6th. Tucker Carlson this week came out with his cherry-picked, hand-selected few minutes of video from the January 6th surveillance tapes. Of the 40,000 some hours of surveillance video, Tucker Carlson this week handpicked a few minutes of video and he aired it. And every Tucker Carlson watcher, everybody in Tucker Carlson's audience who watched what Tucker Carlson did this week walked away convinced that January 6th was a made-up thing. It wasn't violent. It wasn't an insurrection. Just a bunch of peaceful Americans petitioning their government. Now, I want to sweep Tucker Carlson aside right away because I don't want to focus on Tucker Carlson because that's not what's got me so dejected right now and so afraid and fearful again, more fearful again for our country. It's not Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's the most dishonest person in the news media. Tucker Carlson's the most dishonest person on TV. Tucker Carlson, don't for a moment, don't misunderstand what he's doing. He's trying to he's lying to his audience. He's spreading disinformation. He's trying to downplay and whitewash and excuse what happened on January 6th. He's trying to defend what happened on January 6th. I mean, that's what he's doing. That's what Tucker Carlson's doing. When Kevin, and by the way, when Kevin McCarthy decided, because Marjorie Taylor Greene told Kevin McCarthy to give these tapes, give all these January 6 tapes to Tucker Carlson, when McCarthy decided to do that, because Marjorie Taylor Greene told him to, Kevin McCarthy knew exactly what Tucker Carlson would do with this footage. And Tucker Carlson is doing exactly what Kevin McCarthy and Marjorie Taylor Greene knew that he'd do. Spreading a narrative that January 6th was no big deal, that the media made too big of a deal out of January 6th, that January 6th was not violent. It was not a riot. It was no threat to our democracy. It was no insurrection. It was nothing. It was, as Tucker Carlson said earlier in the week, it was people petitioning their government because of an unfair election. That's what Tucker Carlson this week said January 6th was. And again, not to focus on Tucker Carlson, we know because of Dominion's suit against Fox News and all of the discovery and all of these texts and emails that have come out, we now know clearly, and we found out more this week, clearly that Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and so many people at Fox News purposely lied to their audience, about the 2020 election. In private, Tucker Carlson knew the election wasn't stolen. Sean Hannity knew the election wasn't stolen. In private, they knew that. But in public, on their shows, they couldn't say that. So they lied. Came out this week that Tucker Carlson privately told people he hates Donald Trump with a passion and cannot wait for Donald Trump to be gone. Came out this week that Sean Hannity was afraid to tell his audience the truth about the 2020 election because Sean Hannity didn't want to lose his audience. Funny story, by the way. Again, and then I'll get off of Tucker Carlson because he's not why I'm dejected this week. Funny story, though, brief story. During my hopelessly idiotic Republican primary challenge to Trump in 2020, we tried to get on Tucker Carlson's show. Tucker said he'd have me on under one condition, that I couldn't talk about Donald Trump at all. Tucker said I could come on his show. Remember, I'm running against Donald Trump. And Tucker said I could come on, but I couldn't even mention his name. Tucker didn't want me to come on and talk about Trump. Tucker said that he knew if I came on and talked about Trump, I'd bash Trump. And Tucker said he didn't want to have to defend Trump. So I didn't go on. But that's what Tucker did this week, the first week of March 2023. Kevin McCarthy gave him all of this footage, gave the most dishonest person on TV all of this January 6th footage, and Tucker Carlson did his thing and put out a few deceptive video clips, just a few minutes of, again, over 40,000 hours worth of footage to give the impression that January 6th was a peaceful protest. But here's why I'm down. Because 2 years later now, they all believe it. And the reaction I got this week from Trump supporters, every Trump supporter, Republican-based voters, was the same. Aha, Joe. Proof's in the pudding, Joe. I've seen it with my own eyes. January 6th was no big deal. It wasn't violent. It might have been an inside job. Damn near everybody there was peaceful. Finally, right? Fake news, finally Tucker puts out real news. And all the Republicans and all the Democrats and all the mainstream media and the January 6th committee, they've been hiding it from us, Joe, for 2 years. Tucker finally put out the truth. January 6th was no big deal. Again, how corrosive. Think about it. 26 months ago, that day, January 6th, even the most hardcore Trump supporter was shaken by what he and she saw that day. They knew in real time as they watched January 6th that this was wrong. This was bad. This was something they'd never seen, even Trump supporters, and they recognized, just like, Republican politicians like Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy and damn near everybody that day, they all condemned it. Virtually every Republican member of Congress was shaken by that day. But there, for a very brief moment, even Trump supporters said, whoa, stop. This has gone too far. This is bad. That's what I heard 26 months ago from all of them. Like they recognized in that moment that Donald Trump's lie, stolen election lie, had done real damage. And there was a time, there was an opportunity in that moment on January 6th and the day or 2 or 3 or 4 afterwards where something good could have happened. There was a moment there, a brief moment in time, when even Trump supporters, mega, could have joined with the rest of America to, as one people, condemned this, condemned what happened, and said as one nation, never again, let's never, ever, ever let this happen again. Accept the will of the people. Accept your election loss. Do not lie about the election results, because look at what can happen. But then that moment went away, and Hannity and Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and so many other people in my former world of right-wing media began to then push back, began to spread lies, began to get partisan, began to get defensive, began to blame Antifa, began to blame Nancy Pelosi. And within a couple, 2, 3, 4 weeks, that moment disappeared. It vanished. And all of those Trump supporters and Republican-based voters, they all were lost. They all went away. They went back into MAGA land. And it hit me this week. 2 years later, and this is why I'm so down. 2 years later, not what Tucker Carlson did this week, but watching the reaction of every Republican-based voter, Trump supporter, Fox News watcher to what Tucker Carlson did, watching their, again, unified reaction to what Tucker did this week. Has saddened me because they're not reachable. 2 years later, they're now convinced January 6th was some made up CNN thing. Damn near all of them. How sad. January 6th, not a big deal. In unison, I've probably, because I've pushed back hard this week on every platform, and I've probably gotten more hate this week. I've certainly gotten more hate and more threats this week than I have since January 6th, or that time after January 6th, or the time just after the election, after Biden was announced the winner. But I've gotten more anger, hate, and threats this week than I have in 2 years. Because they're not movable now. We can never get that moment back. That moment right of January 6th, when they were scared. It's not going to happen again. The narrative now is permanently written for 40-some% of the country. That January 6th was a CNN hoax. It was no big deal. It was blown out of proportion. See, look what Tucker did. Tucker put out the real video. That narrative now is written for my former political party. And the country, the rest of us, have to grasp this. Tucker's lied, and they've all bought the lie. We need to wrap our arms around this. And I think the point is, look, I'm still going to spend until I'm done, until I die. I'm going to spend time always trying to reach people in the MAGA cult, the MAGA cult, because that's just part of what I have to do. But this week has convinced me again that our job, your job, and my job. Let me do that impossible, dirty work of trying to save people from the MAGA cult. But our job is to defeat them, plain and simple. Our job is to defeat them in 2024. That's got to be our only focus. Make sure a Democrat is put into the White House, and make sure Democrats take back the House and keep the Senate, and make sure that Democrats do well in state legislative races all over the country. Because my former party is lost. Tucker Carlson speaks for the base of my party. Marjorie Taylor Greene this week, who applauded what Tucker Carlson did this week, she speaks for the party. All we can do is fucking defeat him. And that's all we should be focused on doing. I apologize for not putting out a conversation this week. We'll get back up on it next week. I can't lie, and I can't blow smoke up your backside. This has really bummed me out this week. I just felt like we've come full circle these last 26 months. I've worked so hard these past 26 months to try to reach as many people in the MAGA cult as I can. And it just hit me the way they all reacted in unison this week. That January 6th is no big deal, that it's just, they're not reachable. And the finality of that is difficult. I'll be back at it tomorrow, and I'll be back at it next week. And we'll continue and keep the fight up, because we have to defeat them in order to preserve this democracy. Follow me on every social media platform. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, White Flag with Joe Walsh. You'll get all the full episodes, and you'll get notifications when an episode is coming out. I apologize for my dejected mood. I can't hide it. I won't try to hide it. I feel like I feel like somebody hit me with a brick this week, and it's hard. It's been hard for a couple days to get up, and it just didn't feel right this week, putting out a conversation I had with somebody where we're having a respectful disagreement about what to do at our border. It just didn't feel right this week. This was a bad week for America. What Tucker Carlson did this week was bad. And the reaction to what Tucker Carlson did by so many people on the right is bad. But it's also a wake-up call. I put out a piece earlier this week. One of America's two major political parties is fully radicalized. Know that now. Completely untethered to truth. No longer believing in democracy. That is today's Republican Party. Believe in it. know it, understand it, respect it, don't laugh at it, don't laugh at what happened at CPAC last weekend. Respect it, understand it, so that we can defeat it. So that we can defeat it. Thanks for listening. Have a good weekend. As always, be brave out there.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow White Flag with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been White Flag with Joe Walsh.